BBC News.
You're listening to World Update from the BBC in London. I'm Roger Hearing. The US Vice President Joe Biden begins talks today with Israeli officials in Jerusalem in what many see as a hopeless cause, advancing the peace process. Although the internationally backed idea of two separate states, Israeli and Palestinian, side by side, remains on the table, you'll meet few on either side who see any immediate prospect of it. So, is it time to work on something else? Professor Sari Nusseibeh thinks so. He's the former advisor to Yasser Arafat, and he's suggesting a one-state solution, inviting Israel to annex the West Bank. It's radical, and some of his own people would say it's a betrayal of everything they stand for. Many Israelis have doubts too. I brought Professor Nusseibeh together with the man with whom he drew up a previous peace plan in 2002, Ayalon, former head of Israel's Shin Bet security service. And I first asked the professor why he, a Palestinian, would make such a suggestion.
Well, first of all, I've always been in favor of a solution that more or less would be described as fair, meaning that it would distribute rights more or less equally. Now, I assumed that it was much easier to do this by dividing up the land geographically between the two peoples, the two-state solution, and I was very much hoping that this would happen, this would come about, but I started seeing that the possibility has disappeared. And I may be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but assuming that it has, then looking ahead, all one can see then is a grim scenario in which, you have an evolving binational reality, and the only way to arrive at a fair solution in the end then seemed to me to be some way by which we can divide up the rights on the basis of individuals. So it's either distributing rights between two nations or distributing them among the individuals in one political system. Now, I realize that's not acceptable also from the Israeli point of view, and perhaps also from the point of view of many Arabs and Palestinians. So we're really in a quandary, but it's a default scenario. There's no other way to go forward.
I'll bring Ayalon in a moment, but just to anticipate something which I know a number of Israelis would say, that what you're looking at there is an attempt to win what's called the demographic war. You know very well that with a number of Palestinians entering the Israeli state, there are of course already Arab Israelis, in the end you'll get a majority and then you can do what you like with the state. It's a Trojan horse.
Well, I don't look upon this as a war that can be won by either side. I look upon this as a situation where people need to live normal, comfortable, peaceful, fruitful lives. And the question is, how does one do it? Now, if one can do it by separating between the two peoples, as the classical notion has been, as we have in fact worked in order to bring about, then, all well and good. But it seems like we failed, and we failed for a number of reasons. We don't need to go into that. But assuming that this is the case, that we did fail, then the question is, then what are we looking at? What are we going to be having to expect in the future? And all I can see then is this evolving binational reality. And at the moment, it looks like apartheid. So in the future, one has to rework it in order to once again arrive at a fair kind of distribution of rights.
OK, let me bring Ayalon on this, because I think he's keen to comment. So what is your view?
Well, Sari is a great friend, and I admire all what he's doing, but I really hope that he's making a huge mistake. And finally, we shall find out that it is not too late. It is very, very easy to be pessimistic these days in the Middle East. When I met Sari, we came with a kind of optimism and hope. The idea of two states living side by side is a very, very painful process. And we used to say it in every meeting. We told Israelis that it will be very painful to bring back the settlers. And we told Palestinians that it will be very, very painful to give up the dream of the return to 48. But at least in my case, and I really believe that for Sari it was the same, we believe that it is achievable, not because it is easy, because alternative does not exist. The alternative is to give up our identity. We are not only private people. We belong to a society, to a culture, to a nation, and I believe that every society, in a way, wants to express its collective identity.
But could that not be possible in a binational state?
No.
Why not?
No, because if we cannot live side by side, it will be much more difficult to give a kind of reflection to national dreams. What shall we teach in schools? How will we agree on symbols? If you ask me, it will be a very, very violent society. We shall go backward very fast into the third world, and it will be the great victory for fundamentalism and extremism and radicalism and for Hamas on one side and for our people who believe in a non-democratic Jewish state on the other side.
Oh, okay, Sari Nusseibeh, those are some objections. What do you say?
Well, I'm not saying that, that tomorrow life will immediately look better. I'm saying something different, really. I'm saying that at one stage, a lot of people with goodwill tried their best to bring about a real two-state solution. And we have to now face the facts that it seems that we failed. I'm saying basically that we should now look ahead and try to see what we can do in the default situation.
Well, I mean, Ayalon, you're saying it hasn't failed. You disagree specifically?
No, we failed. I agree that we failed until now. I'm not going to give up the hope. More and more people understand that this is the only solution.
Okay, Sari Nusseibeh, let me just bring you on that
the
point.
problem that I'm trying to raise is this, that on the one hand, there is this goodwill on the part of people like Ami and others in Israel who really see that the only way forward, the only possible, acceptable way forward is a two-state solution. But people are ignoring that, in fact, on the ground, things change day by day. And in particular, the situation of Jerusalem. Now, in a two-state solution, I would have wished there to be a situation in which East Jerusalem would be a capital. And in fact, looking on the ground on a day-to-day basis, what is happening, what is unfolding, is a slow dismantlement of that possibility through the creation, cumulatively, of new facts, of taking over Arab quarters, of destruction of places, building of new places, and so on. Now, this is a reality that's actually taking place in Jerusalem in particular, but more generally. I mean, if one looks at what's happening with settlements, even since we started discussions or negotiations back in Madrid or Oslo, there's a constant dynamic unfolding which goes in the exact opposite direction of that about which we hoped would be the basis of a two-state settlement.
Let me bring Ami on that, because that is a clear point there, and I think to anyone looking at the situation every day, it does seem, and certainly to Palestinians it might seem, that the prospects of any kind of workable two-state solution are disappearing. And in a way, what you're saying is keep on hoping actually plays into the Israelis' hands. It's almost a trick.
It does not play on our favor, because we are losing our identity. I have to tell you, it's,
Well, you're gaining land, you're gaining settlements, you're buildings.
No, but we are getting land and losing our identity. We will not be a Jewish democracy. One state will not be a Jewish state. It will not be a Palestinian state. It will be a state without any collective idea.
Does the state need that? Isn't that almost a dangerous thing? Wouldn't it be safer?
I see, if you ask me, as an Israeli, we, Israeli Jews, need it. And I think Palestinians need it as well. If you will ask the average Palestinian in the street, he will tell you yes, he wants national identity.
Well, let's ask Sari Nusseibeh. Do you want national identity crucial for you?
I think he's right. I think the average Palestinian wants a Palestinian national state. And I can quite see that on Ami's side also, the demand is also for a national Israeli or Jewish state. But, Ami's problem is really not with somebody like myself. I think his problem is with the Israeli policies, which are exactly policies that are undermining his aspiration for what he wishes to eventually have as a state. I personally am not as caught up in this idea of nationalism on the Palestinian or Arab side as he is on the Jewish side, or as many Palestinians may be on the Palestinian side. What I'm caught up in is the struggle, if you like, for people to live as equal human beings. I don't care about religion or anything else. But, given the fact that a majority of Jews want their national homeland, national liberation, the majority of Palestinians want their national homeland, the national liberation, this is the reason why it made sense, as much as it was possible to do that, to in fact bring about two nation states. But we failed, and I think we have to look facts in the face.
Sari Nusseibeh and Ayalon. Well, one aspect of